So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the various types of planning applications that you can make. There are in fact somewhere between 17 and 20 different types of applications depending on the requirements of your local planning authority. Now, don't get worried, we're not going to go into all of those because most of them as property developers or self-builders don't really apply to us. There's only 6 that we are really going to cover. Principally, there are things like listed building consent, which is not relevant to us, conservation areas, and various other types, to do with hedges, patios, and all different things that come under the planning law. But for us, we're principally involved in ground up development. So we're looking at new development. We're not looking at permitted developments. We're looking at new development, and those that the planning types of application that we'll need to make in those circumstances. As you might have just heard me say in this lesson, just let me explain that. What it means is that this is actually one of the lessons that is in our Find It course. And this Find It course, we actually have an introduction to this, which is called the 50-minute land breakaway. It's free to attend. So if you'd like to attend that training, you'll find a description, something in the description, a link in the description below, should I say. And I'll also put the link up here so that you can have a look at that. But essentially, it is builditandprosper.com/find land. So if you're interested in that, then please visit that link after you've watched this video, incidentally. Also, if you're new to the channel and haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and remember to hit that notification bell. And if you haven't already subscribed and you've been watching us for a while, then why not? Come on, help us get those numbers up. And just one final thing is we have a membership community, free to join, and that's at members@builditandprosper.com. That's members.builditandprosper.com. And again, I'll put a link in the description below. So now let's get on with these 6 different planning applications that you need to be concerned as a property developer or self-builder. Hi, my name is Jim J. Davidson, and I first invested in property in 1973. I completed my first new build development in 2006. As you can imagine, I've made lots of mistakes along the way, but thankfully I've got some things right, and I've managed to build a property development business. In this channel, I want to help you on your journey and perhaps share some of that knowledge with you. And so through this channel, which I hope you will subscribe to, or through our membership app, which I hope you will join, and incidentally it's free, you can learn a little bit more about building houses and building a property development business. The app is available wherever you get your app from, whether you're on iOS or you have an Android phone, or you can get accesses on desktop, and you'll find a link in the description below. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video, and please post your comments in the description below if you have any comments to make. For context, we are in the detect phase and the planning stage. So let's look at the first type of planning application. That's the Preapp. Now, just a word of caution on this. Not every council offers it. There is a fee often for it. Sometimes councils will actually also, and this used to be generally the case until they started to realize they could make some money out of this, was that they would usually have a consultation with you. So when I first started out, I went along to the planners, met with the planner, had a chat, laid down a piece of paper, this is what I want to do, and they sort of like looked at it, made the right noises. Yes, I think that's something that we would look at favorably. That's the best that you're ever going to get from them. It's always a non-binding thing. So some of them now have formalized the process. Some just don't offer it altogether. So you'll have to do a little bit of research to find out what's applicable in your own particular council area. But principally, you're just giving them as much information as you want to, and the idea is that you want to incur the least amount of cost, obviously, at this stage, because you're just trying to get some feelers whether they are going to give you that, yes, we would look at that favorably. As remember, you're not going to get a decision here, and you're not going to be able to come back to them. It is an opinion, and of course there may be other people who are involved in that opinion later on when you put in the formal application. So that's why ultimately it may not be successful. But it's fairly good because you get a reasonable idea of whether that's something where they're absolutely is completely out of the park and they would not give you under any circumstances, or at the best is going to be yes, we'll look at that favorably. So that's the pre-application process. Then we come on to the outline planning application. So let's just imagine that we've got a piece of ground here and we are looking at it and we're saying we want to build within this piece of ground. Now, whether that's a single house or multiple houses, basically we're saying, okay, this is what we want to do. So in principle, let's just say that we want to put 4 houses on here. Just let's make it just very easy. And we can provide them with as little or as much information as we like. Now, having said that, they may come back to you and say, we don't actually have enough information to give you a decision. So they may come back to you and ask you for further information. And of course, it's in your interests to give them that information, because what they're simply saying there at that point is, we're not rejecting it out of the park. We want to look at this a little bit further, give us a bit more information, and they will guide you on what that further information that they are asking you to give them. So therefore you would then provide them with that information, and they would then give you a decision on that. And let's assume that it's a positive decision, that they approve planning. Then they will list a whole bunch of conditions to that. So they will and one of them obviously is that you provide detailed plans of what you're particularly going to do, but they'll actually list certain things, areas of concern or things that they want clarified. So depending on how much information you gave them in the outline process will determine how much information they require still further to assess it. So clearly the more information you give them and you get that outlining, then the better that is for your proposal, because then you're further down the road. However, what a big note of caution here is, this does not give you permission to build anything. It simply gives you in principle, and the planning in principle, which is the third one we're talking about, is essentially the same. And some councils actually don't talk about outline planning, they talk about permission in principle, and some talk about permission in principle, and some talk about outline but don't talk about permission in principle. So the two are essentially the same. There's not an awful lot of difference. It tends to be the different terminology of the council. So let's assume that they've given this a positive. Then we move on to the fourth one, which is reserved matters. And so what they've done is that they've given you the outline or planning in principle, and now they want you to satisfy the reserved matters. Now, in actual fact, to be honest, this is actually very similar to full or detailed planning, because essentially what you're asking them to do, what they're asking you to do is to give you every last detail of what the proposal is going to look like. That's why it's called full or detailed. So you're giving them all the details, and therefore then again they may come back to you, but you're basically satisfying the things that they put in the decision notice of outline and permission in principle. Now also, full and detailed planning, which is the fifth one, is you can actually go straight for that. So you can ignore pre-application, you can ignore outlining or planning in principle, and therefore you wouldn't need reserved matters, and you can go for full or detailed planning straight away. So what situation might you do that? Well, I would say where you're reasonably confident that you are going to get the planning in the first place, because what that will do is it will expedite the process. Because if you go for outline planning, then you then have to go back and then you have to resubmit the new application, which would be the full planning or reserved matters, which essentially, as I said, is the same. And so therefore you can actually then delay the whole process. Having said that, the full planning may require stuff that would have been satisfied in the outline planning, and therefore is going to delay the process anyway. So in the outline, for instance, they may ask for things like they may consult like the local water authority, and the local water authority will have come back with something like saying, yes, there's capacity within our sewers to take foul water, there's capacity to supply water presently, but however we reserve our position on that until a full application is submitted. So again, it's really I think it comes down to cost and risk, and so you have to look at if you're fairly certain that you can get full planning and that you're not going to have that rejected, then it's maybe a case of going for full planning. So another situation where you might do that is where maybe you've got some existing planning on there. So let's say you had planning for 2 houses, but you looked at the site and you said, actually I think I can get 4 houses on there. So you would then put in for full planning, because at least the principle has been established that there can be 2 houses there, and simply what you're looking to do is to actually establish the principle for 4 houses. You may be changing the design at that time, or you may be keeping the same design, but you're just wanting 4 houses on there. So again, it will depend on the situation of what you're trying to achieve. And then the 6th one is discharge of conditions, and so any application that comes with approval, and that can even be full planning, may have certain conditions attached to it. So they may, for instance, want a ground contamination report to be done. So we're satisfied that, but we want a ground contamination report to be submitted, and we would want, if contamination is found, what is the remediation of that contamination. So remediation is basically, in other words, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to solve that problem? There's contamination in the ground. How are you going to get rid of it? So that would be remediation, and it could be various things that would be attached to that, and therefore you require to discharge these conditions. Now those conditions can be prior to actually doing any groundworks, in other words, before starting the project, or it could be at the end of the development. So for instance, it could be something to do with landscaping. So it might be things like within the first season after the completion of the build, we want you to put in a hedge or some certain landscaping or certain trees. We want the planting schedule to be implemented that was part of your full planning application. So that's in principle, that's the 6 areas that you're likely to deal with. In terms of just clarifying it, I would say that you are simply looking at really 2 main areas, is outline or planning in principle, or full planning, and so the others are all sort of like add-ons to that. So just to clarify that, so you might go for a pre-application, but if you don't, then you're going to go for outline or planning in principle, which would be the least expensive route in order just to establish if you can do a build there, and then full planning, which would then allow you to actually do the build. But if you're confident that you can obtain planning for that particular site, then you would go for full planning or detailed planning. And I say full or detailed because it just depends on the area and your planning council how they name it, but essentially they're exactly the same thing. So I hope you found that helpful. If you did, then please like and share. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Join us in our community, and again, if you're looking for land, go down to the description below and you'll see builditandprosper.com/find land, and join us on our 50-minute land breakaway free training. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, stay safe and goodbye. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos, then click to watch the next video. Please remember to visit our website at builditandprosper.com to get our app, or click on the button on the YouTube header if you're on desktop.